Okay, Erev Tov.
Oh,
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to quickly run through a short version of what we did in our last meeting 2 weeks ago. Let's see.
what's the matter?
Here we are. Okay, so we're going to start with this. We basically, 2 weeks ago, we went through 3 paragraphs. I kind of tried to take out the center of each one of those 3 paragraphs. As we remember, they were in one of HaRav Kook's notebooks, one after the other in sequence, Tafshin Samech Hey, Tafshin Samech Vav, 765, 766, 767. I just want to run through them again without reading each one of the whole paragraphs. A heretic may be found who possesses a strong inner faith, more than thousands of people of little faith, both individuals and entire generations. So HaRav Kook is saying there's something internal and something external about faith. Some people understand themselves to have a certain kind of faith, but HaRav Kook looks negatively or critically at it. It's a small faith. It's not uplifting. It's not lofty. And there can be people who possess a very strong inner faith that contradicts and clashes with what is considered to be the external form of faith. And so they understand themselves to be heretics. But the truth is they possess a strong inner faith. It can be true about individuals and about a generation. So it influences our attitude, our response, our discussion, the way we have a conversation with this person or with this generation. And just like it can be true about an individual, it can be true about a generation. And clearly, HaRav Kook is saying something about his generation, 100 and something years ago, 110, 120 years ago. The second paragraph was all spoken expressions of faith. Spoken expressions, the way we explain, the way we word faith, offer only a faint and limited shadow of the inner spiritual matters. The spiritual matters are more lofty, more abstract. The way we speak about faith, the way we express faith is not faith. It's a shadow of what faith really is, something inner and spiritual. At times, these shadows of faith may be perceived in an inverted way, opposite to their true essence. And this heresy is a form of genuine faith, like an inverted seal. We spoke about a seal that, it's backwards, so to speak, like a mirror. When you press it on the paper, it gives you the seal in the right way. And sometimes people perceive something about or an expression of faith in that way, opposite of what it really means. I'll try to give an example that we've mentioned before. If God is great and almighty, and that makes man very small and unimportant, that's a kind of external expression of faith. Wow, God is so big and strong. And I don't explain what that means about man, and then I perceive it to mean that man is unimportant. And so a person becomes a heretic because of this external understanding of faith, which is the opposite of its true meaning. Its true meaning is that every human being created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim, is connected to this great, powerful, mighty God. And wow, that makes us great because we're connected. We have this godly soul. And so the one person expresses faith in certain words, and he seems to be wow, God is very strong, and he's really strong in his belief, and he makes human beings little. And someone else objects to making human beings little, to thinking of a power that is there to oppress us and not to raise us up. So which one is more? The true essence is sometimes found by the heretic. And the third paragraph was, or the main content of it, about books. two people write books. One writes a book of faith and one writes a book of heresy. And a person may be harmed by books written by those of little or small faith because they make faith little and I want something greater, or I don't want something greater and I accept that and it makes me small. While books written by complete heretics will bring him to self-correction and awaken his inner soul, sometimes opposed to what is externally faith, and it awakes his vitality and strength and his faith in the living God. Sometimes he doesn't recognize it as such. So again, what's common to the three paragraphs is that faith expresses itself in different ways, and sometimes the external way that it appears is not identical, is not in harmony with the inner meaning of what I want it to mean for myself or for the people around me. And then sometimes a person who rejects it is deeper in his faith than a person who accepts it. So those are the three things we saw last week. As I've mentioned in the past, it changes my reaction or the way I have a conversation with a person who expresses this heresy of this external expression of belief, which I understand is not a good, deep expression of faith. So my discussion with him will not be to try and put him down or prove that he's totally wrong, but to try and communicate and try to deepen together, find a deeper, more inner, more spiritual, more abstract meaning of what faith is about. That's one thing. Another point that came up at the end of the shield 2 weeks ago, Mark, you mentioned this, is that part of the reason why heresy appears is because it's here to clean us from all kinds of parts of things that have clung on to faith over the years, and they shouldn't be there. And so when we meet and we're conversing with one another, we can actually, there can be a certain balance and a certain mutual, how do you say, give and take. In Hebrew, hizun hadadi. Like it's a two-way, and not only a conversation, we're giving something to one another. We are, what's the word for, we're kind of each one is not echoing what the other one is saying, but each one of us reacting to the other is actually giving the other person a constructive response. So we are helping one another. A person who understands himself to have faith might be enabling a person who understands himself as not having faith to understand that his attitude can be a deeper expression of faith. And the person who understands himself not to have faith in God might be giving the person who understands himself as having faith in God, might be deepening his faith or cleansing his faith, even purifying it, refining it, making it grow. So it's a two-way road. This two-way road, that was something I don't think you used the words a two-way road, but that we contribute something to one another. And I think it creates something that bothers people in the Israeli Jewish society today is that sometimes it's kind of somebody's looking down upon someone else. And often it can be someone non-religious saying that the religious people look down on him because you don't believe, you're not a believer, so we look down on you. We're willing to be nice to you, and maybe because we believe that if we're nice to you, maybe one day you'll repent. We'll get you to repent. We'll get you to come closer. So he feels they're looking down on him. They're not treating him as an equal. Or the opposite. A person who's religious and, modern people who think that they have all the modern, that, we've all grown and we've outgrown faith in God and religion and things like that. So they look down upon me because I hold on to something ancient and they think I'm primitive and so on. So everybody feels looked down upon or can feel being looked down upon. But if we face one another honestly with this kind of attitude, maybe we can create a better conversation between us when each one is willing to open up to accepting something from the other that will make him grow. We don't have to become the same. I don't have to absolutely agree with you, but maybe there's something that I can learn from you and something that you can learn from me. And that way we can respect each other and nobody be looking down upon anyone else, and nobody be afraid that he's being looked down upon by anyone else. So all this is kind of a reminder of what we did 2 weeks ago. And now I'd like to see 2 more paragraphs and then 2 other paragraphs that will take us in a totally different direction. I dafka want to do that and hopefully create a kind of balance. So let's see this. Kovitz, we did Hey, Vav, and Zayin, 675, 6 and 7. This is the same sequence in that same notebook, 600 or 768. Sorry, 768. We were at 765, 766, 767, now 768. So it's the same sequence. Here we go. When one looks into the depths of heresy, one can see how within its abysses are drowning holy souls, filled inwardly with divine supernal light, and they cry out with a terrifying voice that arouses great mercy. Redeem us, help us. Interesting way to express something. And those who rise to the aid of these impoverished souls to rescue and deliver them from being destroyed, they are the elite servants of God, mighty warriors who have a name in all worlds. Their name is engraved forever in this world, in the spiritual worlds, whom all the lofty angels above are ready to fulfill their will. As such powerful souls, warriors, elite servants of God, that the angels above are ready to fulfill their will, and all forces of evil and impurity below tremble before them with reverent awe and great trembling, like Rabbi Hanina Mendoza and Abaye and their companions. I don't know the reason. I thought of cutting that out, like censoring the last half sentence, but I figured I'll leave it. Maybe one day we'll find out why Rabbi Hanina Mendoza and Abaye, what that means about them. But I'm going to leave that out because I don't know why they were chosen and what that means, what the stories are in the tradition of Torah Sheba'al Peh, that HaRav Kook identifies them with this idea. But we're going to try and understand the idea without the specific people who are mentioned here. So let's look at it again. When you look into the depths of heresy, you can see that there are souls drowning in there. Souls that have that inward divinity. As I said before, in an intrinsic way, they have a deep connection to divinity, to faith, some great, super lofty light, and yet in the world, in our world, their faith, their connection to the divinity, it doesn't click. They don't find themselves connecting with the frameworks or with the way faith is expressed and so on. And so they find themselves in a place where they are considered heretics, or they consider themselves heretics. But they're deep down in their soul, they're crying out, redeem us, help us. I don't want to be a heretic. I don't want to be disconnected from God, from faith, from loftiness. But I can't help myself because the way everything is expressed, I so much don't identify with that. Help! Somebody save me. It's an amazing description. And then there are people who rise to aid these impoverished souls, to rescue them. Again, how do I react? How do I discuss and talk with a person who expresses heresy? But I see, you have to have the right eyes, the right outlook to be able to see that there's depth, inward divinity there, crying out to be discovered, to be revealed. And those who can see that and can aid these souls and rescue and deliver them from their being destroyed, these are the elite servants of God. Wow, all the great things that he says, mighty warriors, they have such power to be able to see the depth in other people whose souls will externally look like heretics, but internally are connected to the divine in an inward way. They are so powerful. Look how everybody is either afraid of them or willing to fulfill their will at any time. And if I ask myself, can I think of someone about whom HaRav Kook is saying this? It might sound strange to say, but that's himself. He himself, meaning he has, you can find a an exchange of letters between HaRav Kook and another rabbi, a rabbi Ridbaz, Rabbi Yosef David ben Zimra, something like that, from Tzfat in the beginning of the 20th century. And the rabbi from Tzfat argues with him about this whole thing of Shemitah, where HaRav Kook gave a special heter that you can sell the land of the fields to a goy, to a non-Jew, and then there's some of the things that we can do in the fields on the year of Shemitah. And this rabbi was very critical of HaRav Kook's heter. And then while he argues with him, he also said to him, and I hear that you're close with all these heretics, with all these chalutzim, settlers of Israel, and they're all non-believers, and they don't keep the Torah and everything. And why do you connect with them? And then in HaRav Kook's letters, Igrot HaReaya, over here on the shelf, on my left, HaRav Kook, we have the letter that HaRav Kook wrote back to him, and he explains to him about the inner part and the external part of different souls. And sometimes those who are externally not connected, they're so deeply connected. And if you know that, you can reconnect them to faith and to Judaism and to Torah and mitzvot. So if I put one and one together, I think HaRav Kook understands himself to be someone who's trying to do this. I don't think HaRav Kook was haughty. That was very much not his personality. But I think he's saying, guys, if we can do this, we will be so powerful. And maybe I can teach you how to do it, So let's go and try and study that. That's what we're trying to do here. I will take a break. And I will invite anyone who wants to say something about what we saw.
I really like the concept of. Well, I'm going to get myself into trouble here. I like the concept of heresy. How's that? Put it on the table. But there's a problem, I think. There are many problems. But one of the things about Judaism is that we pass our tradition from one generation to the next, right? It's a continuous tradition, and that's the way the Jewish religion is transmitted and maintained throughout centuries and millennia. And then you have a heretic, and how does the heretic?
Heretic.
Sorry? Oh, yeah, no, I know you like the pronunciation, Yelena. How does the heretic keep or transmit his or her
Heresy.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a puzzle to me. In other words, the heresy maybe cannot live more than a generation or two.
I will add to that, but before I add to that, I'd like to ask you, Mark, what do you mean? What was your opening sentence? That
Don't go there.
That he likes heretics.
we have to open it up.
Yeah,
That's the point. I hear your soul crying out, save me. What do you mean? What was your opening?
And I like, I think the idea of heresy is terrific.
What do
He
you
likes
mean?
heresy.
The idea of heresy is something you see something positive in the idea
Yeah,
of
I do,
heresy.
because the way phrasing this, and I think it's very, very positive, is that there's as you were speaking before, you're talking about two people interacting, two groups of people interacting. On one side are the heretics, and on the other side are the faithful. Either they try to convince each other of their own way, and you're saying that's not what we're talking about here, or they try to share aspects from each other and learn from each other.
Well, they might be both trying to convince, but at the same time also seeing that it's not an all or nothing game.
Yeah.
It's not sum zero,
So if we were all, people of deep faith, we're Jewish. Okay, so we've certainly find something to argue about anyway, even if we're all on the same page of faith.
Of course.
But if we have a heretic mixed into introduced into the mix, I think the discussion is much more interesting, much more much deeper.
May I ask you personally, do you find this discussion or argument within yourself?
Which?
Between heresy and faith?
No, I'm a confirmed heretic. No, it's interesting. I mean, it's challenging, right? Because I ask myself, where would I fit on the spectrum? And my grandfather was very religious, and very observant, and he would always ask me, "So, Mark, why, you should become a rabbi?" And I said, "Yeah, but that's a problem because I don't believe in God. So how can I do this?" And that's always been a problem for me. So I'm, like I say, I'm a confirmed heretic, no chance, no, so I'm not saying.
And yet you're here in Israel,
Yeah.
in Kino David, in studying. Why?
Because why? It's a very good question. Because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to be respected. I think it's very important to respect our tradition. Jewish tradition is not just a religion, in my view. It's also a peoplehood, and it's also a nation. And you can be, I think Judaism is a very peculiar religion because you can be Jewish without believing in God. You can't be Christian without believing in God. Very peculiar that way. So there are many aspects to Judaism, and I don't, and yeah. So you can come to Israel and be part of the Jewish people, and help Israel flourish or maintain whatever, or the strength of Israel, whatever, and that in turn helps the Jewish people, and that in turn helps the Jewish religion. Not a problem.
I don't want to turn this into about you, but it's very interesting for me, and we could talk one-on-one about this at length, if we'd like to. But I think there's something about what you're saying that can be part of this class, not because of you, because of what it expresses, and that is that can there be aspects of values in life that can be understood as religious values and can be understood as some other base or set, where does the value get its value from? If you think that morality is important, you can say, I believe in it because God says it's important, or because it's something humanistic, or because I believe that maybe I don't believe in God, but there's something lofty, there's something special about human beings. Therefore, we should behave in a different way than animals. And if you say any of those, I don't know if you identify them with them, but I might identify it as some kind of deeper expression of faith that you won't identify as faith, and some religious person will say is heresy, but some religious people are very lacking in that connection to faith. You believe in a God who's high up and gives orders, and they have to follow his orders, and there's something inner and maybe divine about feeling those things inside, even if you don't identify it as belief in God. Okay.
Wait.
Eliezer, one second.
Okay.
Quick question.
I wasn't Abaye, but
Abaye wasn't ordained? I don't know.
I mean, he's a great Jew,
Right.
but he's not rabbi.
No, because many of these sages in the time of the Gemara were not called rabbi. It's not him specifically. Oh, well, a lot of them, Abaye, Rava, Rabba, there's a bunch of them, and what they say about them in the oral Torah itself is Gadol Miraban Shmo. Some people are so great you don't have to call them rabbi. Their name is greater than using the term rabbi.
That might be connected.
But it's not right about Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, but okay.
I wanted to play with what Mark was saying.
Yeah.
Because when you think of a really great person, forgetting about religion, who was a really great person? Somebody who questions things and was always questioning, always trying to delve deeper and finding out. Now, when I think most of us in this group would agree with that, and that a person who's always questioning has kind of deepness to himself or herself. And but one thing one can question is religion.
Of course.
And so this could be a form of heresy. And
But that heresy, I would comment, if we were talking about questioning faith itself, is you can't have real honest faith if you don't ever question.
right.
If you're just doing
It's a
what you were
paradox.
taught.
It's certainly a paradox.
Yeah.
And it's a paradox that can't be explained away.
Right.
But I think that's related to what he's saying.
Okay.
That you might have some fantastic one. Spinoza, you might have one of the most brilliant people of this generation. And he might go in directions which are contrary to classical Judaism.
Yeah. First of all, I would say, if I look for one person who is described by people who knew him closely as always questioning and delving deeper, I would mention HaRav Kook, which is interesting with all his powerful faith and very, lofty and spiritual soul. He was always deepening and questioning and not just, on the routine from yesterday. And if you mention Spinoza, that's a great example because Spinoza, on the one hand, saw godliness in nature, which, you can be a very religious person, so-called religious person, and never see that there's godliness in nature. You see godliness in overcoming nature or in performing acts that are not natural, but were commanded to do them. You see religiosity there, and you don't see a religious expression. You don't see faith. You don't see God in nature on the one hand. And on the other hand, he was considered by some a heretic because he saw God as being the same as nature. And so HaRav Kook says about him that he's half right, half wrong. He doesn't use it, doesn't say those words, but identifying nature as God, if I remember my Latin correctly, it's Deus sive natura, or close to that. God equals nature. But he says that in Kabbalah, HaRav Kook says, in Kabbalah we have two terms. We have Memale Kol Almin, God fills the whole world. All the world is full of God. And Missovev Kol Almin, he is beyond or around all worlds, meaning the world is an expression of godliness, but not equal to God. God is greater than nature. Nature is one expression of God, but God is infinite and greater than nature and so on. And so some people will only see the aspect of Spinoza's expression as an act of faith, and some will see it only as an act of heresy. And some people will see it as, well, it has potential, but it's dangerous, and let's discuss it, and there's something deep about it that some religious people are missing. And if we are capable of including him and taking what we learned from him, but putting it in a broader structure, then we can get a blessing from Spinoza. But the community at large excommunicated him because what he was saying was going to pull people away from faith. It's a tricky game. It's a tricky challenge. It wasn't simple, but it's a very good example. Michael.
So that's a perfect intro, I think, for my comment. What I'm seeing here in this description is the concept that Jews need to be able to connect to God. And I wonder if this isn't, at least in part, an indictment of the system that if you can't find a way to connect to God and live in that system, maybe what happens to you is what happens to Spinoza. And it's perhaps for some people too rigid, too many walls, and they can't function. They can't get outside that. I mentioned at the last class, I thought that we really needed to be able to define what a heretic is in order to discuss this properly. And I don't know that I would include Mark in that category. If I don't think he would be showing up for these if he was a true heretic, just in my opinion. But that's how he self-defined.
We're not going to let him, not going to let him
Yeah,
define himself
yeah.
as a heretic. We're not going to let him
Far be
go.
it from me to drag Mark kicking and screaming into non-heresy. Although it might be fun to try. Etta had a question she wrote down. Considering all this, do we think that maybe it might be easier to sway somebody to a different religion because they think that's where they'll find the answer to connecting to God? If Judaism is
I,
providing that.
I will say two things. First of all, one about your opening and one about your ending. About your opening, I can really see that you can have, people who are very deep, always questioning, always re-questioning and deepening and so on, or seeing different expressions of belief than what's the norm and the framework. And they can and then they have a choice of one of two options. They can either be totally, speak their whole truth, and probably people will be some religious people will be very unhappy about it, or accept that they can't fully express what they think because it just won't be constructive. They'll clash with the community and people are not going to listen to them and so on. Or I think of it in another way. There are some things that I will not say to children. This kind of discussion, I will not bring to children. It's just not right for them. They don't have the basic first, pillars on which to build higher up. It's just not possible. On the other hand, I give a class to 18-year-olds about these kind of questions, and I say to them quite explicitly, I bring some sources that show that that it's a good thing to do because we're going to grow from it. And I say to them, you shouldn't be moving on from 18 with the same understanding that you had when you were 10 or 12 or 14. Something you should be questioning, and something should be deepening and growing. But I'm careful. I don't just throw out everything I think, or when you're 18 to 18-year-olds or anyone else. So, there's a sense of being, again, someone else can be critical of it and say, you're not telling the whole truth, or someone can understand and say, I understand you're trying to be constructive about it, not just to throw out truths that not everybody can contain. So it's a tricky question in all directions. About what you said at the end, what did I want to say? What was it that you said at the end?
Are we setting up a situation where somebody can be swayed to join a different
Oh,
religion?
yes,
Feel
yes.
like that's where they'll
I've
find
had
God?
this experience, and for instance, it's very sad in some parts of Israel, the state of Israel, that because of politics, because religion is very much expressed in a political way in the country, that some people are deterred, pushed away from religion because of the politics of it, without looking at the religion. And if someone religious comes and tries to give a religious, give a ray of light from religion upon something, oh no, you're trying to lure me in, you're trying to, to bring me to be about tshuva and so on. Well, I'm trying to just talk to you about Judaism. Maybe it can enrich your life. And people push it away. And then sometimes you can see, I remember one experience somewhere, it was in Beit Shean. There's a whole Roman structure there in Beit Shean, archaeological findings. And I was there one day, there was a religious Christian group there, and a group of Israelis, I don't know them, but they were without kippot, okay? Externally, I can say they were without kippot. They were interested in the singing. The Christian group was singing some kind of liturgy or something, and they were very attracted to it. And my feeling was, if I set up a minyan now, and we start singing something of our tefillah, they're going to say, shush, you're bothering us. Don't do that out loud here. This is not a bit Knesset. Or so they'd have an objection to it. And my feeling was because other religions, they can sometimes, be interested in. It's not dangerous. There's no danger I'm going to be lured in. oh, Judaism, I got to be careful here. I don't want you to influencing my children and so on. And so it's very, very delicate how to bring things in a positive way and create processes. Look at Tel Aviv. There are places in Tel Aviv, some which I identify with very much, and some which I identify with partially, who do all kinds of, religious centers or centers for studying Judaism. Very inclusive, accepting, come without a kippah, come whatever way you're dressed. No, we're not here to make you Bali Tshuva. People come and study Judaism. Some people go through and get some Jewish knowledge and understanding and maybe connection and don't become religious. Of course, some become religious and then some oppose it because you're trying to make people Bali Tshuva. What is it? It's not legitimate. I want to try and make people Bali Tshuva. They don't want to listen. They don't have to. I'm not allowed to try and then talk to them. All this tension. It's so delicate what people are willing to open up to and what not. And yes, it goes very much along with what you were saying. Okay, let's grab another paragraph. And maybe we'll have time for the other two. Here we go. This is it's the same notebook, but it's at the beginning. It's only 64. We were in 768. Now we're back to 64. The desolation of thought caused by a lack of study and knowledge leads a person to dwell excessively on the essence of the divine. And he cannot imagine how terribly brazen and utterly foolish such speculation is. And the more steeped he is in ignorance, the more he believes that he is drawing closer to true divine knowledge, the lofty truth that he's heard all great souls yearn for. I'm going to stop here and then we'll continue. So HaRav Kook is saying that for many generations, we've totally not been engaged in study and knowledge about divinity. And because of that, because of this lack of study and knowledge, people think that they should be dwelling on the essence of the divine. What is God? How do we define God? How does God act? As if we can know it and define it in a way that our mind can comprehend, can wrap our minds around it. And HaRav Kook says, of course you can't. It's brazen, it's foolish, it's speculative. And if you're understanding of this, you'll understand that you're trying to kind of connect to something that's hard to define. But the more you're steeped in ignorance, the more you believe that saying God is A, B, C, D, and E brings you closer to the divine knowledge. You've heard that this is something everybody yearns for, being close to God. So if I can define God and then come and embrace him, the end of this act is building a statue and serving, like religiously serving the statue. So even if you don't build a physical statue, it's like you're trying to define something that's not definable, and you think that by defining it, again, it's going back to this. There can be a person of faith who thinks this is being very religious, and he is a person full of belief in God and faith. And the heretic who says, what's this nonsense, is closer to the truth when he's saying this is not true. You're not moving forward, you're moving backward. So that's part of the issue we're talking about. And we'll continue. And through generations of this habit of thinking this mistaken thought, as if it's possible to contemplate the essence of God, many vain delusions accumulate. So religious belief kind of accumulates these piles or stacks, another stack and another stack of all kinds of definitions of what God is and how God acts and so on. And the consequences of this, of which are grave and manifold evils, to the point that even the individual suffers a loss of both physical and spiritual vitality due to the resulting pain and darkness. At the end of the day, it doesn't give light, it gives dark, and it leaves us in pain, and we can suffer from that. And then in order to purify the air of the pollution of this arrogance, so it's arrogant of a person to think that he can define God. And so in order to purify the air of the pollution of this arrogance, literally in the Hebrew, the word is chutzpah. I mentioned that. The word is chutzpah. The chutzpah or in English, the chutzpah, that you think that I can define God, it's chutzpah, arrogance, wickedness, and it arises, absolute heresy arises, which is no better. That doesn't get us any closer to God, but it stands in absolute opposition to the former error. So we have two perspectives clashing. One which is absolute heresy, one which thinks it can absolutely define God, and they clash, and neither one is getting us really close to God. And then says HaRav Kook, okay, until now, everything here sounded very pessimistic. Either people are defining God or they're being heretics towards this attitude of defining God. So neither one is bringing us closer to God or helping us move forward. But until now, it's been kind of what did I say? Pessimistic. Here it becomes optimistic. And through the clash between these two opposites, humanity will receive great help, drawing it nearer to a luminous knowledge of God, a knowledge that brings man closer to both temporal and eternal happiness. And instead of desolate, reckless thoughts about the essence of God, the human heart will come to embrace a clear-minded focus on pure ethics and supreme spiritual strength, which guides a person on the paths of life and places them in the light of God. I think what HaRav Kook is saying here is that these are two processes that are both wrong, they're clashing, and what they're going to bring about through their clash is seeking God with an understanding that we can't really define him in human terms. And therefore it will be, you can't define how close to God are we going to be, but it's going to be better than what we have today. It will be a great help, drawing us closer to a certain knowledge that brings man closer to temporal and eternal happiness, and to embrace a focus on ethics and spiritual strength, which is something we get from God, or we get from our connection to God without being able to define what God is and how that works. But it's better than either rejecting the idea of God or defining what God is. So the clash might even result in something constructive. But in the meantime, we're clashing. And I don't know if it's getting us anywhere, at least we're clashing. And as I said before, I will ask myself a question. Do I want to clash and hope that eventually it will turn into something constructive? Or do I want to be able to give the two sides in this clashing, banging into one another? Can I possibly give them some tools to be able to discuss with one another and go back to what we started with, of saying maybe there's something that I can learn from you, you can learn from me, and we can begin to grow together rather than be on a 100% or 200% clashing course. Because, as we say, if two cars are driving 100 kilometers an hour in opposite directions and they clash, the clash is not 100 at a speed of 100 kilometers an hour, it's at a speed of 200 kilometers an hour. So if we can stop this collision with all the force coming from both directions and turn it into something where there's discussion and trying to learn from one another, I'd prefer that. But at the same time, HaRav Kook is saying, you know what? I understand the clash is painful, but maybe we can find something constructive growing through that. Eliezer.
Two things. First of all, it sounds like a religious Karl Marx.
A religious Karl Marx. Interesting. Okay.
Synthesis.
Rather than a clash of social status, it's a clash of religious.
It's a clash of ideas.
Yeah.
The synthesis, antithesis, what comes out of it. And secondly,
So if I will be a religious Karl Marx, I will encourage the clash of heresy with religion, because it's going to bring about a higher form of religion at the end.
like HaRav Kook.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he wasn't encouraging it. He was hoping that through teaching, we could turn it into something constructive rather than allow the clash to continue. But at the end, the clash will create something
A long
constructive.
time ago, I heard a talk by Moshe Kava, the president,
Yes.
and he gave a talk to ours. I've always been thinking about that there are two processes in nature. There's a process of self-duplication, and there's a process of when something completely turns what mutation. Right? Thank you. This and these are the two basic processes in biology, and you need them both, because if you just have self-duplication, the things will just, I don't know, degenerate.
Yeah.
And same like when you marry in the same family.
Yeah.
It's you have to have marriage outside of the family to have this kind of conflict or whatever to get the get the synthesis.
Mhm.
And that's what it says.
Synthesis demands analysis, which separates things and finds the differences, and then you can synthesize them. If you're all the same, nothing is going to be. There won't be any synthesis. Interesting. Thank you. Yes, Michael.
So this actually struck me as a little bit dangerous of a statement. I
Okay.
mean, number one, if you've got a head-on collision between a gasoline car and an EV, you don't wind up with a hybrid.
Okay.
You wind up with pieces of metal scattered everywhere.
Okay.
Unlike the meme on the internet.
Yeah. And what is going to cause the human heart to embrace a clear-minded focus on pure ethics and supreme spiritual strength, as he says, as opposed to just another set of incorrect assumptions? There has to be some guidance in there. And I guess that's where Rav Kook is saying that's his job. And I understand that, but it wasn't clear to me because it could also be seen as the human heart has it in itself to find these pure ethics and supreme spiritual strengths, which is basically humanism, which has been disproved over time many, many times.
I agree that, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think to some extent, I said it when I said, I don't like the clash. I'm not happy about the clash. I would prefer constructive listening and discussion. But a lot of society is clashing, has been for more than 100 years, and it worries me. The clashes have not always, often have resulted in terrible results, consequences. But at the same time, pragmatically, I will definitely try, as I consider myself to be a disciple of HaRav Kook, even though I never met him since he passed away in 1935. And I'm sure you all know that I'm less than 90 years old. But I, studying from his writings, I certainly in some ways, more than one, try to follow what the light that I see or the guidance of a certain path to take in what I see in what he writes. And I try to prevent the clash or to try and guide it, veer it in a direction of having some kind of constructive discussion. But at the same time, to some extent, I think there's room for the clash. You have to tone it down and not allow it to become personal venom. It becomes hatred between two people or two groups. That's certainly not constructive. But sometimes I can see that there's some value to the clash and allowing it to linger, to be around for a while. But at the end, I agree, I would always try and direct it to something more constructive. But I would leave some room for understanding the clash. Maybe not necessarily on an interpersonal level, but on a philosophical level, or maybe writing about it. But also a little bit on the level of pragmatism in society. People say this, people say that. it can stir something and create something at the end. Or I'll give you a different example. The question of religion and state in Israel. Okay, Americans, some Canadians, I think, are used to separation of church and state. And if I were living in North America, I would agree with the separation of church and state. Because if the church and state were one, then I'd have a problem because it would be a church and not a synagogue. But being in the state of Israel, I believe that it's not a good, that the religion, the separation between synagogue and state, religion and state, is not a good thing. I'm not for politics, religious politics, and and being coercive about religion and things like that. But at the same time, the total separation of religion and state in Israel, I believe, will not solve the issue. It will put the issue to sleep. And that I'm not interested in. Actually, HaRav Kook writes about that somewhere. I mean, I know where, but in one of, not in these things that we're studying now, but he talks about the famous statement of the Gemara in Masechet Brachot that we quote at the end of Tfilat Shacharit, where we say, Talmidei Chachamim Barbim Shalom Ba'olam. Scholars of Torah bring a lot of peace to the world. And HaRav Kook says, this is kind of a mission statement. It's not a description of a fact. It's saying, Talmidei Chachamim, part of your mission is to bring peace between different kinds of attitudes in the world. And he says, I don't mean the kind of peace that's putting everything to sleep. Or as the way I like to express it, seeing my grandchildren growing up, when they're sleeping, they're definitely not fighting. Okay? If they're awake, they can be yelling at one another, fighting over a toy or whatever. If they're asleep, there's no yelling and screaming and no fighting. But that's not what I want to see. So if, everybody goes to sleep, nobody's arguing with everybody, everything's quiet. No, it's not what I want to see in Israeli society. I want to see us, like Mark said before, we're Jews. If we're not going to argue, either we're sleeping or we've lost our Jewish motivation. We should be arguing. It's fine to be arguing with one another, just be respectful and listening to one another. So I think there's a lot to be said about the clash if we do it in a constructive way, but not allow the clash to take over as a clash just on its own.
So there's a fundamental contradiction there.
Yes.
Very interesting fundamental.
There's a clash.
Because we say we want to have a clash in a constructive way. I mean, like Michael said, we don't make a hybrid by, in the way that he described. So we want to have a clash, but what does that mean? That means that the person who has faith is going to be open to saying, I want to learn something from you, which means maybe the faith isn't perfect. And the person who's the heretic, Ilana, says, okay, well, maybe I'm a little bit uncertain about my heresy and I want to learn from you. So you have to be open in order to have this clash, but you have your own beliefs. So there's a fundamental contradiction. In other words, the reason you clash or discuss, perhaps is a better terminology, is because you want to learn and grow. You want to be able to learn something from the other side. You want to be able to be open. If, on the other hand, you are closed, you have a problem. And the problem that you have if you're closed is much worse than the problem you have if you're open.
I think, certainly I will agree with that. And I will say, though, I can have faith, but it doesn't mean that I'm not willing. There are two things I won't say, and they will enable me to be in a constructive discussion. I will not say my faith is totally questionable, and I'm open to listening to whatever you have to say. And if you wipe out everything I believe in, okay, that will be the result. I'm not interested in that. I don't want that to happen. I don't want that as a teacher. I don't want that to be the result of my teaching. On the other hand, to say because I believe in something, it means I have 100% of the truth, and you have 0% of the truth. To my mind, that's a mistake. I 100% think that I think I'm 100% right in saying that I'm not 100% right, and you're not 0% right. So I can learn something from you. So I think it's a positive thing to do, and I think it can be taught. It is scary. It is scary. not only is it scary, the more the modern world moves away from some of the milestones of some kind of ethics or what was considered ethics or boundaries or frameworks within which society exists, or religion even, it kind of loses its framework within which to live. And people are becoming, religious people are becoming more and more afraid of engaging with the modern liberal world because of this. Of course, the other option is the totally the opposite of liberal religious world, which is also horrible. So we're looking for. So again, I consider it my part of what I'm trying to do in the world is to try and talk with those people who are afraid of the modern liberal world, engage with them in the same way as, I'm not arguing with you. There's danger there, but totally closing ourselves off from it. First of all, it's not the truth. There's something there. There's some things there that are right that we can adopt or live with. And second, you're not going to get away from it. You're not going to be able to hide from it. It's better to face it and deal with it. And you'll take some small points from it, but and reject a lot of it. And you have to respect the people and live with them. They're here. You can't ignore them or override them. So I try to convince people not to be like me. They're not going to be like me. I try to convince people to be a little bit more open to something than they are, and also on the other side of the spectrum. Okay. Apparently, I'm not going to turn you into believer, even if I spend the whole week talking to you and discussing things with you. But maybe you'll have, as we call it in some religious circles, it's called in Hebrew hirorei kfirah. I'm not sure, but I'm having a thought maybe of heresy. So maybe a heretic will have a little bit heresy about his what do you call it? Heretics? Heresyism or whatever. Maybe I'll have a little bit of a second thought. Maybe I'm not 100% right about my heresy. So, maybe that's a constructive step. So, okay, you're not going to be religious. Maybe you'll be a little less far away from it. So we can try. Yes.
Hope I can say this well. I think the world was designed to have this conflict. After all, 6,000 years later, we still have it.
Okay.
And I don't know, you could correct me, but I don't know of any place where it says that the Jews are going to conquer the world. It says that the world will decide to accept a Kadosh Baruch.
Yes.
But in fact, all these different peoples will come around and the Olam and the Mashiach.
In Mashiach, yeah.
But this conflict is part of the world, and we don't have to enjoy destruction or anything, but we have to accept this and work within it. And we have to, and this includes not legitimizing the other side. Now, question is, why will anything good happen of this? And this is simply faith. The faith that the world was created good, that the universe was created good. And so good will come out of it. And I think, for me, that's the basic essence of faith.
Okay, there are a lot of interesting things to say in reaction to what you said, but we're coming close to we're going to have to end. But I would say, first of all, very interesting because of Christmas and New Year's. So I've been, hearing all kinds of comments on how Judaism relates to Christianity. It is idolatry. It isn't idolatry. Questions like that. And I saw a very interesting piece. Actually, it was from two modern rabbis, not alive. One who died maybe 100 years ago, and one who died some 30 years ago. But people who lived in the 20th century, and both commenting about Christianity's holidays, that in any case for us, we don't have to look at it as idolatry in the most severe, strict sense of fighting against it and things like that. So, if someone says to you, Happy New Year, you don't have to raise all your barriers as a religious Jew and say, I can't answer that. I'm not going to say back to you, Happy New Year. If they said Happy New Year or Merry Christmas, you can say to them, Merry Christmas. Why? And he says, because one of them says, because even if you consider, and I would put a question mark on this, but even if you do consider, and Christianity is not one thing, it's such a large variety of religious positions, but even if you say Christianity or part of Christianity, parts of Christianity are idolatry, they do believe in one God above. Okay, so there's the Son of God, and maybe they worship the Son of God more than God himself, but they do believe in a God above. And then according to halakha, or some halachic attitudes, it's now called avodah zarah b'shituf. It's kind of putting together belief in God with avodah zarah. And for non-Jews, that's not avodah zarah. That's already, going back to what you were saying about Mashiach, they will all accept God. Does that mean they'll all accept God the same way that I do? Maybe not. And maybe that's coming close enough, and not close enough, but progress in the right direction. So I could see it even as something that there's some positivity to it. And on the other hand, you will find Jews, and I can't say that I don't agree with them, and I strongly disagree with them. But I can't say, again, that there's absolutely also about them, that there's nothing to what they're saying, who believe that the way for us to either to retain our Jewish faith or to make the world move forward is to be fighting, maybe not violently, but fighting, struggling against other religions and so on. And sometimes they have successes that maybe I don't. So, I can't say that it's total nonsense. It's not going to be the way that I choose or encourage, but maybe I have to discuss with them and find something that I can learn from them. Maybe they'll be willing to learn something from me as well. There are two more paragraphs that I wanted to study today that we're not going to have time for, but I will say what I chose them because I wanted to see how HaRav Kook is critical and negative towards heresy. Okay, I don't want us to give over the wrong impression that HaRav Kook is very complacent and very liberal. Heresy is okay. That's not what he's saying. He's saying it's part of a process. So it'll be interesting to see some paragraphs in the future about what HaRav Kook does have to say negatively, critically about heresy, and then come back to trying and putting things together nonetheless. So that's our plan for the next time we meet, hopefully 2 weeks from now. Be'ezrat Hashem.
Thank you. Goodbye. Have a good trip to Israel
Thank you.
When are you coming?
in a week.
Yeah, well, we should arrive.